I am joined on stage, as you can see, by a distinguished panel that you will hear more from in just a couple of minutes. This is a very special session on legislative and regulatory issues and insights. And if you would, moderating and leading this panel this morning, would you please help me welcome CEO of NIADA, Mr. Michael Linn.
Thanks, Michael. And good morning, everyone. If any of you that were in the Board of Directors meeting yesterday, this is the little forum that I spoke about. We only briefly went over a few things in a meeting yesterday, but what we're going to do here this morning, and I'll introduce the panel up here, but at the end of today's presentation, if you have any questions, we will take those, just kind of hold those to the end. We'll have a few folks out in the audience with handheld microphones, and please kind of raise your hand and I'll try to recognize you. And don't ask your question until we have a microphone in front of you, because all of this is being recorded and so forth, so we do want to capture whatever the question may be. Let's see, right here starting off to my left, Shaun Petersen. Shaun is kind of new on the scene with us. He is our new Legislative Regulatory Compliance Counsel from Columbus, Ohio. Beside him, Sante Esposito. Most of you that have been around the last couple of years have met Sante. He is the president of Federal Advocates, our DC lobbying firm. Right beside of him, another Esposito, son Michael. He's the managing partner of the firm there. And then Chris Martin, who of course is a dealer from Fayetteville, North Carolina. He was just elected our new president yesterday. So he's going to be giving up his position as the chairman of the Legislative Committee. We've got another guy doing that. In fact, that will be Keith Hagler from Texas. He'll assume those duties, but for today, he's on the hot seat. Right beside Chris, long-term friend of mine, Bill Dohring from Sacramento, California. He's been, gosh, Bill, you've been the lobbyist there for IADAC for, what, 30 years?
30 years.
Yeah, and I've known Bill for 25 of that. Does a great job for our California Association. And then next to him, we've got Steve Jordan, who is NIADA's COO, right under me. And one of the reasons I've got especially these two guys up here is because of a lot of the issues that's been going on out in California, especially in the buy here, pay here world. So if you are involved in buy here, pay here, whether it's your total business or it's part of your retail / buy here, pay here, if you're not aware of what's going on up there, pay attention to what these guys say up here this morning. Chris, I'll recognize you first as the chair, if you'd like to say a few words to everyone.
Just like to welcome everybody again and tell you how excited I am to be up here with these guys, and even more excited as a dealer knowing that they're representing us in Washington and in California. They're just doing a spectacular job. They're going to, I know, go over quite a bit of what's been going on, but I know there have been several trips, a lot of conversations, a lot of meetings, a lot of behind-the-scene things that they're doing for us, and they've got so many ideas about what they can do for us going forward, and just want to thank you guys, and again, welcome everybody here, and I know you're going to enjoy this.
Thanks, Chris. All right, we're going to jump right into it, so I'm going to let Sante get started and let us know what's going on in D.C.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chris. You know, I hate to be the first one up after a great motivational speaker, but I was thinking, you know, if you think it's difficult doing the luge, you ought to try lobbying Congress. I'm going to talk about two things this morning, the current Congress, and secondly, the legislative issues pending before Congress that affect the association. And I want to qualify my remarks on the Congress by saying that what I'm about to say, I'm not taking issue with any political party or any member of Congress, but I just want to give you all a perspective of the realities of the situation in Washington, D.C. I've worked in Washington, D.C. now for 38 years, and that translates into 19 Congresses and 8 administrations. And in all those years, I've never seen a more partisan, more dysfunctional, and more legislatively inept Congress than the current one. And on the issue of partisanship, in the House of Representatives, which you know is controlled by the Republicans, the Democrats are completely out of the process. They're not involved in anything that goes on in the House. They're not involved in putting together hearings, agenda, witnesses, formulating legislation, or any strategy that has to do with legislation. And on the Senate side, which is controlled by the Democrats, the situation there is better for the Republicans in the minority, but not by much. And you've all read in the paper about the partisanship that exists between Congress and the White House. And on the issue of functionality, I mean, the situation in the House of Representatives really is you have 3 political parties. You have the Democratic Party, you have the traditional Republican Party, and you have the Tea Party. And there have been many times, and you've seen it all, where the Speaker can't control his party. He'll cut deals with the White House on the debt bill. He'll cut deals with his own chairman on a highway bill, only to bring those issues back to his caucus and to be turned back around by the vote within the caucus. In addition to that, there's no love lost between the Speaker and Majority Leader Cantor. And the level of communication and coordination between the Republican leadership in the House and in the Senate is almost non-existent, and the same can be said with the Democratic leadership in the House and Senate and the relationship between the Democrats in Congress and the White House. And in terms of the legislative process, it's almost impossible to get any meaningful substantive legislation enacted into law. To date, 183 bills have been enacted into law, compared to the last Congress at this time of 383, the previous Congress of 460, and the Congress before that of 492. Now, not that, more is better, but that does raise an issue. Now, on that point, the lack of action by Congress is not bad for the association, because we're not asking for anything. We're not in the offensive mode. However, what is of concern to us, and on behalf of the association, is the kind of issues that Congress is dealing with. And those come down to 2, cutting spending and policy reform. And it's the latter which is something that we have to deal with, and we deal with it in a defensive mode in Congress. The 4 pieces of legislation which we are now either involved in or tracking on behalf of the association. The most visible one is a bill S-1449. This is a bill that came out of the Senate Commerce Committee. The chairman of the subcommittee is Senator Pryor from Arkansas, very, very influential member, very powerful member of the Senate. This bill deals with motor vehicle safety. When the bill came out of committee, it had a provision in there that said that no motor vehicle which was subject to a recall could be sold or leased. In addition to that, it put the onus on the dealers to know about pending recalls and the financial responsibility to cure the defect. Working with Mike and Steve, Shaun, and the leadership through Chris and the Legislative Committee and you all, we were able to get that provision stricken from the bill. But I said it's the most visible of the 4 bills because what Pryor did is he was able to get his bill tacked on as an amendment to the Senate-passed highway bill, which if you're reading into the press accounts, you'll know is in conference right now with the Senate. They're negotiating the differences in the Senate-passed highway bill versus the House-passed highway bill. So we are involved in that process to make sure that nothing happens with respect to Pryor's portion of the bill that adversely affects the association. The second bill is a bill that Senator Schumer from New York introduced as 1330. That bill also prohibits the sale or lease of a motor vehicle subject to a recall unless the defect has been cured and unless the new buyer has been informed of the recall, the defect, and the remedy. The third bill that we're monitoring is a bill H.R. 1449, which is the Motor Vehicle Owners' Right to Repair Act, and I want to read to you what that bill specifies. It requires that car manufacturers, and our concern is because some of the dialogue is that they may extend it to dealers, It requires car manufacturers, number one, provide to the vehicle owner and service provider all information necessary to diagnose, service, maintain, or repair the vehicle. Number two, offer for sale to the vehicle owner any related tool or equipment. And number three, provide the information that enables tool companies to manufacture tools with the same functional characteristics. The fourth bill that we're taking a look at is H.R. 164, which is the Damaged Vehicle Information Act. Again, reading from the text of that bill requires all persons who terminate a contract related to a motor vehicle due to flood or water damage, collision, fire damage, theft and recovery, or any other circumstance that adversely affects the market value of such vehicle to disclose to the public in a commercially responsible, electronically accessible manner the following: the VIN, the date of termination of the contract, the odometer reading, whether as a result of the incident that resulted in the termination of the contract, one or more airbags in the motor vehicle were deployed, and the cause of the termination of the contract, including whether such cause was flood or water damage, collision, fire damage, theft and recovery, or another cause. In addition to tracking legislation, a couple years ago, a law passed directing the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, to promulgate regulations having to do with motor vehicle safety. Those regulations apply not only to policy issues like distracted driving and teen driving, but to the actual components of a motor vehicle. NHTSA is close to beginning that process, so that's something that we're going to be watching, and Shaun will have the lead on that. The other two issues I want to mention are auction sales and rental cars. You know, Congress tends to react to stories. Auction sales is a good example of that. Again, dealing with Senator Pryor's subcommittee, the FBI approached Pryor about situations involving the sale of auction vehicles, where those vehicles turned up in Africa to be resold in Africa and the money funneled to the Hezbollah. So the FBI is very much involved in investigation that terrorist-funded situation. Unfortunately, and this is a small number, but some of the dealers that were involved in selling those vehicles knew about this whole process. So the FBI approached Pryor and wanted him to put legislation forth that would address that situation. So again, when the highway bill on the Senate side was coming to the floor, Pryor drafted an amendment. The amendment did two things. It required auction sales when a vehicle was sold to provide certain information about that vehicle, not only to the potential buyer, that is the VIN, the odometer, the trade brand, but also photographs of the vehicle, who was selling the vehicle, the history of the vehicle, but to put that into a database that would be made available to the public, and that information would be kept for 4 years. In addition to that, the prior amendment would have provided that same sort of information to consumers who were buying auction vehicles. When we heard that amendment, we knew it affected some of the membership of the organization. We pushed back on Pryor. We made the case, look, you know, we're hearing from the FBI that they want this, but we're not sure this is the kind of information that they really need. We're working with them on a cooperative basis. Why rush to judgment? So Pryor decided to back off and say, okay, I'm not going to go ahead with my amendment, but I want to work with you guys on this issue because this is a very important issue. So the issue hasn't gone away. I don't expect anything that's going to happen this year legislatively, but we've had recent conversations with his staff. It's now percolated over to the House side, and they're going to want to address this issue. And our hope at the end of the day is that we don't need legislation to deal with it. We can work this out in a way that's mutually beneficial for everybody. The second issue has to do with rental cars. Another story. Two sisters in their early 20s rented a car in California, rented a car from a major rental company. When they went to pick up their car, they were told they were going to be upgraded. What they weren't told is the reason they were going to be upgraded is because there was only one car left on the lot, and that one was subject to a recall. And the lending company knew about the recall. The recall situation had to do with the brake system and everything connected with the brake system in the vehicle. They rented the car. 2 hours later, they're driving down the highway. The brake fluid ends up just spewing out all over the place in the engine, smokes up the engine, happens instantaneously. The girl is blinded who's driving the vehicle. They smash into an 18-wheeler and they both die. So this is California. Senator Boxer, who's also on the Commerce Committee, gets very much engaged in this, as does Congressman Henry Waxman, who is the ranking Democrat in the House side on the Energy and Commerce Committee that has jurisdiction over motor vehicle issues. They reach out to all the major rental companies because, you know, the downside effect of this is, you know, these companies, they obviously sell vehicles to you all too. So the question is, who's going to be responsible for these recall situations? So they've told all the rental companies that they have to cure the defects with respect to recall vehicles in their possession. Some have agreed to do it cooperatively. Some have not. She held a press conference at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time this morning to point out those who are cooperating and those who are not cooperating. So that's generally the kinds of issues that we're dealing with in Congress. Our concern in Congress is Congress does not understand our industry. And the last thing we need for them to do is to dictate to us how it should be run. We feel very comfortable with where we are in the process in terms of action on behalf of the association. We're fighting in a defensive mode at this time, but we want to be vigilant. We work very closely with the leadership, and we appreciate all your help and support on these issues. Thank you very much.
Sante, I think from what, I guess last week on the rental car issue, the only company that signed off was Hertz.
Right.
Has anybody else joined that, or are they still the lone wolf?
That's all that we heard, but we don't know what's happened over the last couple days. The one who has not joined, who is the one responsible for the California situation, has taken a pretty hard line on, you know, we're just not going to do it. Right. And she's got a bill in that would force them to do it. But again, you know, it's easy to say in a piece of legislation, you know, you can't sell, lease, or whatever a vehicle that's, you know, subject to a recall, not dealing with the specifics of how you deal with that recall situation. And our concern is whether or not it trickles down to our folks.
Okay, Shaun?
Thank you, Mike. First of all, let me thank all of you for the opportunity to work with the association. I've been on board now for about 120 days, and it has been a wonderful experience. I look forward to representing you and meeting you and having the opportunity to interact and make sure that these federal regulatory agencies understand who we are. Sante mentioned that the biggest concern that they have with respect to Congress is education. I feel the same way about these federal regulatory agencies that we interact with. Having a background in state government regulating, amongst others, car dealers, I can tell you that there is a lot that is on these regulators' plates that crosses a lot of different industries, and helping them to understand how the industry works is going to be a big responsibility of ours. In March, we had the opportunity to meet with folks from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and from the Federal Trade Commission, and just kind of introduce who we are and start to engage in relationships with some of the key players. There's been a lot of turnover at the FTC with some of the folks that are going to be primarily regulating us. And then obviously with the CFPB being a new agency, it was important for us to get in and to introduce ourselves and make ourselves available to them as they engage in the regulatory framework that they have. Let me just give you a little bit of background about Director Cordray, give you a sense of who he is and the responsibility that's now placed on him. Director Cordray is former Attorney General of the state of Ohio, and we obviously know him through that interaction for several years. He's a 5-time Jeopardy champion, so you can understand how brilliant he really is. He understands the importance of business, but he's very much a consumer advocate. While he was the Attorney General of Ohio, he was very proactive in a lot of consumer protection initiatives, and he's certainly going to bring that element to his responsibilities as director of the CFPB. In March, we met with a gentleman by the name of Richard Hackett, who is the associate director, assistant director of the department that's going to be regulating auto finance issues from the CFPB. And And I can tell you that in the many years of interacting with regulators at both state and federal level, I was thoroughly impressed with him as an individual and the perspective that he brings. He has been in private practice as an attorney representing financial institutions for the better part of 30 years, and now, as a second career, has now taken on this responsibility in government. So he has an understanding of the impact that regulation has on the private industry, and that's a good thing to have in that position. He pledged to us to engage in information sharing and welcomes anything that we can provide to him, and we certainly are taking him up on those offers. A couple of things that the CFPB has been doing here recently. The jurisdiction that the CFPB has is kind of threefold. They have jurisdiction to supervise any large banking depository institutions. In addition to that, they have authority to regulate what we call non-banking institutions, those that do not have a charter from another federal agency and are not necessarily taking deposits. That jurisdiction is kind of broken into two elements. Regardless of size, they have authority to regulate mortgage industry and certain industries like that. If there is, for us, and particular concern to auto finance, their jurisdiction is limited to what they call larger participants. They will be engaging in a rulemaking process at some point down the road that defines what larger market participant means for our industry. That has not happened yet. We anticipate that that may be something that they take up here in the coming months. However, they also have jurisdiction, regardless of size, to supervise non-banking institutions that pose a threat of unfair, deceptive practices. There is a proposed rule that was released here about 10 days ago or so, where they have proposed to define what type of notice would go out to those institutions and how that regulation process would work. So we will be reviewing that and looking at potential comments there. Because of the Attorney General's background as a former state AG, you can imagine that he's reached out to those state AGs to build a relationship with them. There's a memorandum of understanding that's been entered into between the CFPB and the state AGs where there will be information sharing. There's a memorandum of understanding that's been entered into between the FTC and the CFPB where there will be some information sharing, particularly as it relates to consumer complaints. The other area that the CFPB is undertaking, they are going to be conducting a study of arbitration agreements and how that impacts these financial markets that they have oversight for. There is a proposed rule, rule is probably not the right word, there's a proposed notice out there for comment as to what shape the study should take. That's certainly something that we're going to be interested in and taking a look at and filing comments on. The last thing I wanted to mention about the CFPB is that the advisory board. The CFPB is required by this Dodd-Frank statute to have an advisory board that will help them understand emerging trends, give them some guidance. They're not required to follow that, but they're certainly required to have it, and the guidance is to be submitted. We have a member of the association that has expressed interest in being part of that board. We won't disclose names to protect the innocent until the decision is made, but we anticipate, we're hopeful that this individual can be selected for that advisory board and we can have a representation on those issues with the CFPB. Very briefly, I wanted to mention a couple things that the FTC is doing. Tomorrow, we have the FTC representative going to be here. We'll save a lot of these issues when she's here. We also have a representative from the state of Iowa who's an assistant attorney general that has been doing automotive related issues for the state of Iowa and kind of chairs this subcommittee that the National Association of Attorneys General has on automotive issues. So a lot of these things we'll save for tomorrow, but just to give you a kind of a whet your appetite look, You may recall last year the FTC held 3 roundtables that discussed issues in the automotive industry. Tomorrow we'll talk a lot about those particular things. So if you have questions that you want to ask of Jessica Rich, who's the FTC Associate Director, who will be here to talk about automotive issues and particularly the things of the roundtables, we'd encourage you to save those up. I anticipate that there will be some potential regulation that comes from the roundtables. The state attorneys general, and this would be another great discussion that we have with Bill Brock from the state of Iowa tomorrow. The state attorneys general, a large group of them, bipartisan, submitted comments to the FTC as a result of those discussions that would recommend best practices be adopted into a rule governing spot delivery. It will be interesting to see if the FTC is anxious to accept those recommendations. The FTC recently entered into 5 settlement agreements with dealerships across the country for advertising violations that were particularly revolved around comments related to paying off a consumer's trade no matter what they owe. The basis behind the FTC's decision was that because consumers are the ones that are having to finance this negative equity into their new agreement, that was a deceptive statement. The last thing that I wanted to mention with respect, or sorry, let me do 2 more. Last thing I wanted to mention with respect specifically to the FTC is they just entered into a settlement agreement with a dealership out of Georgia for violations of the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act as it relates to the safeguards rule and the privacy rule. This is posted on their website, and I encourage you all to go kind of peek through it. What had happened is this dealership had uploaded some peer-to-peer software onto their network where information that we consider to be that confidential personal information such as social security numbers and banking information, et cetera, was able to be accessed through this peer-to-peer network. And you can imagine the concern that the FTC had. There are about 95,000 customers' information that was not safeguarded. So a word to the wise that they're out there. Last thing I wanted to mention is with respect to the IRS. The IRS has been actively engaged in conducting Form 8300 audits across the country. We've got a couple of our members that have gone through that process, so we can certainly connect you up with them, and you can get a perspective as to what experience they had. Specifically, what the IRS is looking for with respect to these audits is making sure that you've got a policy in place that communicates to your employees how these 8300 forms are going to be filled out, who's responsible for them, how the information is being gathered and reported to the IRS, and how you are reporting to the consumers that following January that their information was in fact transmitted. Thanks, Mike.
Very good. I will say also that Shaun here has been, most of you are aware of NIMVITIS, National Motor Vehicle Title Information System. He has been named by the U.S. Department of Justice to serve as a board member on that. So it'll be great for the association to have some influence there. So congratulations on your appointment. And maybe it's not congratulations.
We'll find out.
We'll see what happens. All right, let's move just west of us here to the great state of California. Bill, tell us about all the crazy things going on out there.
Yeah, I feel like I'm sitting on The View here. I keep looking for a few more women, though. But, Sante, are you sure you didn't work in California?
Why is that?
Well, when you describe the legislature, it's just the way it is in California, except we have term limits, which makes it really bad. But, Mike, thank you and NIADA very much for inviting me. I'm indeed honored. I'm glad to see a good delegation here from California, a good friend, Mr. Gularte. And so we have the situation that Sante described so eloquently is exactly the way we have it in Sacramento, with the exception that he's got to put up a 535 people. We only have 120. But the bipartisanship is just, it's horrendous. And you can't, the Democrats own Sacramento. And it used to be that it was the unions, but now the environmentalists have more power than the unions. and they will go to any lengths. And I think as Mike said, or you said, that they don't understand our industry. And trying to explain that to them is really difficult because there's a lot of intricate pieces in the used car industry. But the used car industry, you know, my father sold cars. I've been lobbying for IADAC now for 30 years, and I love my clients. And I like to go and explain things to them, and there's a certain people that I use as examples. One's one of your past presidents, Pat Matlock. Been in the same location for 62 years. And he's selling cars to great-great-grandchildren of his original customers. And that's because he's an honest dealer. And it's buy here, pay here. And they're coming after the buy here, pay here dealers in California because of a new LA Times article that have absolutely no facts. And I think Mike was on a conference call one time where I was testifying before the Senate, and I said, if I could just have one fact, if DMV could come and give me one fact where an investigator went out and took a charge against a used car dealer, be it buy here, pay here, or the others. In order to get the used car dealer or the new car dealers off the bill, they got amended out of the bill. So all the buy here, pay here only applies to 10% of the dealers in the state of California. So they're not really doing anything. The other 90% of the dealers could sell their paper or assign their paper to, you know, a high interest rate. It doesn't affect them at all. They could do it. But if you're a buy here, pay here dealer, which they haven't come up with the definition yet, by the way, which is very hard. So yesterday I went to see the consultant of the banking committee, and she said, you know, there is no definition. I really don't want these bills in my committee. And with that, we discussed a few things. The other thing is that I don't know of one single entity in the state of California that would be regulated by two state agencies. In our case, it would be Department of Corporations that really they license lenders. A car dealer is not a lender. We're merely holding that title till it gets done. We're not loaning any money. Department of Corporations doesn't regulate pawnbrokers, and our transaction is very, very similar. I've met with corporations, and they don't have an official position from the governor yet, but they don't like it. On the 29th of this month, the first time in my 36 years of lobbying, I have corporations and DMV together to sit down and work out a veto strategy for these three bills. Mike, do I need to explain to him about the bills? Or?
Yeah, we may have some people out here that don't know the ramification of the three bills.
Well, there's three bills, and they've all been amended, as I said, just to say buy here, pay here, and that got the new car dealers off. The first one is 956 by Ted Lieu. That would require anybody that does buy here, pay here, whether it's one car or 10 cars or 100 cars, that you would have to be registered with the Department of Corporations, which would require you to have a $25,000 bond, and which would also require you to have a $25,000 liquidity liability, just to protect you. But again, we're not lenders. The other bill, 1447 by Fuhrer, started out as a buy here, pay here bill, and not to have any devices in to track the car if you buy here, pay here. But now it's got a 30-day, 1,000-mile warranty, but the problem is that the warranty is unlimited, not to mention the fact that under California law, you have to be an admitted carrier in the state of California to sell that product. We can't sell it. There's no product on the market that will do it. The third bill, 1534 by Wachowski, would require you to put the value of the car based on Kelley Blue Book, Black Book, whatever, on the car and change it. Well, originally we'd have to change it every week, but then they went down to every 60 days. Both bills have passed out of their respective houses, and I look forward to our meeting with DMV and corporations because it's going to be costly for them to regulate it. And the other issue is that if a consumer complaint, who regulates it? Is it corporations or is it DMV? They don't know. So we have some real problems, and while I think that we have a better chance to kill them in the other houses than we did in their house of origin, because as Sante said, I mean, the Democrats in the U.S. Senate own it. If it's a Democrat bill, it's getting out. In the House, it's the same thing, only we don't have enough Republicans to stop it. And I too am not partisan, it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And so we're doing our very, very best, and there's a lot of good buy here, pay here dealers. Like I said, Gus Camacho, we got Regularte, never had a problem with DMV, never had a complaint, and I bring up Pat Matlock, 62 years, only one complaint, and it wasn't his fault. He got a smog from a faulty smog shop. But educating the legislators is very difficult, especially with term limits, because they turn over every 6 years. Well, every 2 years if you get beat, every 6, so you don't get a chance to build that relationship with them like we used to, where they came to our meetings. The Air Resources Board, we had a bill passed that would allow the Air Board to go on a dealer's lot and inspect all the smog equipment, but back then, a missing gas cap was $1,000, a tack hose was $1,000. So we said, wait a minute, you have this right with new car dealers, but not used car dealers. So let's work this out. The chair of the Judiciary Committee called the author, who is now our state treasurer, Bill Lockyer, and said, isn't there something we can work out? And we did. We worked out that you have a major complaint or a minor complaint. So if you had a missing gas cap, they couldn't fine you the $1,000, but they could correct it in front of the inspector. So you just put that down. So what we did is, back when California was big, we had 16 locals. And I think Shaun alluded to it through the relationships that you build up with people. Anyway, we had the Air Resources Board come to all 16 of our local chapters and show them exactly what this program was, what to look for. And we also included in that the private parties that had the vehicle smogged at the time of sale as well. But after the 4th meeting, the guy from the Air Board looked over and said, I owe you an apology. Your dealers are really nice people. And God love all of you. You're a very honorable profession, and keep it up. And we're here to help when we can.
The issues out there, and of course, you didn't mention the cap on the interest rates and so forth. That's another situation.
Yeah, you're right. Well, right now, under the federal law for military, the cap for a high interest loan goes to 36%. Under the Lou bill, it's 17.25%, which, I mean, if you're buy here, pay here, it doesn't work at all, because it's no different than being an insurance company. You're taking it on a risk. The guy's got bankruptcy, got foreclosures. It's no different than the guy that's 70 and the guy that's 20 getting life insurance. The guy that's 20 is the lesser risk than the guy that's 70. So that person with the worst credit's a higher risk, therefore that's what we charge. And it keeps those creditly challenged people in cars. Without us, they wouldn't be in cars.
Exactly. It was this whole situation out there, it really concerned us on a national level. And, a lot of our state associations, I mean, even NIADA, we don't have tons of money laying around. And it takes money to fight these type things. So we actually joined forces with our state association there to give them kind of a little hand, and wound up putting together pretty much a coalition of some pretty big players across the country. Steve, I'll let you address that.
Well, and that's a good point. To Billy's point, one of the things that we quickly realized in the state of California with these 3 varying bills, each one having very specific ramifications on the industry, 956 capping interest rate at the Fed rate plus 17%, the 30-day 1,000-mile warranty, putting the retail price and the wholesale price of your vehicle right next to each other. I mean, the 3 bills have multiple and conflicting priorities. And, as we saw these things going through the legislature, like a luge going down a slippery slope, we quickly realized we needed to augment what we were doing on the legislative stuff. These guys are meeting with the legislators, they're talking to the staffers, they're talking to the bill analysis folks, and we're trying to communicate what buy here, pay here is and what some of the nuances are, but it's a very complex business model, as most of you guys know. But also, to Bill's point, it's a heavily Democratic legislature, so a lot of the votes in the committees were going straight down party lines. So we really kind of took a step back and realized that we needed to change our strategy and augment it a little by adding a public relations component. And we found that there were a handful of dealers north of Los Angeles. Gus Camacho had taken the lead to find some people in the state who have deep PR experience and was willing to foot the bill himself. Appreciate that. But once we started looking at some of the opportunities to engage other entities aside from the car guys, you know, in a situation like this, if you're the industry that's being affected, I mean, we're expected to be against these things. So one of the things that we wanted to try and advance is this idea that there are other people, consumers specifically, that would be directly affected and impacted by the net effect of what these bills would do. Additionally, there's chambers of commerce, there's other business groups, there's other trade associations that through the development of what we're calling the Coalition to Protect Our Freedom to Drive, over the last couple of weeks, we've put together a website that articulates what the three bills do to give consumers and other business entities and trade associations an understanding of what these things do. But in just a very short period of time, we've started to get a lot of traction in the media, on the radio, and press releases. And by changing our tact to augment, like I said, what Billy D and his crew are doing in the legislature, we've started to take the conversation to a completely different group of people. So we, along with some of the other national trade associations like NABD and NIADA and IADAC, we formed this coalition, and it's really starting to take off, and we're now having a different voice out there in the media, kind of telling the other side of the story. And so far, we've got a few dozen other entities, including the California Chamber of Commerce that we've been working with to analyze the various bills. They've recently, just within the last week, published a position in opposition to Assembly Bill 1534. So after reviewing it, we know that at least the California Chamber of Commerce is opposing that one. And we're working with them to analyze the other two bills, and hopefully we can get favorable support and opposition of those two as well. But so far it's really taken off, and I appreciate a lot of the effort that Gus and Ray and some of our other dealers in California have contributed. But we had to change tact a little bit to, you know, kind of cast a wider net, so to speak, to get other voices involved.
Absolutely.
Well, and we certainly know that across the country out there, there's a lot of states and even some federal agencies that's kind of looking to see what's going to happen out there. Mm-hmm. And that was certainly one of the reasons that we wanted to get involved, because if it hits there, if everything passes, it's just going to walk itself across the entire country. And that's something that we have got to try our best to stop.
Mike, just real quick, it's not to interrupt, but I did want to just also say that one of the points that we're trying to make in some of these media efforts is because, and I know Bill has also added this to his repertoire in his conversations, is that we need to just take a step back and study these things. I mean, in other words, we got three separate bills, each do three different specific things, and nobody really knows the net effect that these three bills can have in a cumulative way on the state revenues, on consumers, on business entities, on the dealer community. And preliminarily, we've done our own assessment, and based on what the California Board of Equalization has estimated on an annualized basis of $468 million generated through sales tax revenue from the automobile industry, we can make certain assumptions based on the net effect of these bills and extrapolate that over to, you know, kind of a bookended estimate of anywhere from 240 million to 330 million in lost sales tax revenue. And so that's one of the arguments that we're starting to make now once we've kind of done our own industry analysis. And again, I mean, it's informal and we've made certain assumptions. The other side is making assumptions as well. But that's probably a wild understatement, but the bottom line is nobody really knows the true effect these bills could have on all of those entities in California. So one of the positions that we're taking is let's take a step back and analyze it. And let's do a 2 to 3 year case study and a fiscal and general impact study just to see and monitor through various stakeholders that are in the industry all across the board, the Department of Corporations, the Department of Motor Vehicles, consumers, dealers, the whole group, and let's really find out what would happen if these bills pass. So, and we're getting a lot of traction from that as well.
Well, if I may, I'd like to add to your point. When I started out, I said, the other side has absolutely no hard evidence whatsoever. In 2011, there were 4 million cars sold in the state of California. That's both new and used. And we got that data from the Motor Vehicle Recovery Fund, because every dealer in California pays $1 for every report of sale. And out of that 4 million cars and 11,000 dealers, there were 9,200 and something complaints, which came from new car dealers, used car dealers, wholesalers, red services, and private parties involved in that. Now, of that number, which I think is pretty intense, it's large, DMV only took action against 550 dealers out of 4 million cars sold. And that's where they revoked or suspended their license. Now, those are hard facts. And the proponents overlook it. It doesn't mean anything. But we have facts on our side.
Well, and I would just add to that, I think this is a classic case of a knee-jerk reaction to sensationalized journalism that's now dictating state policy that could have huge detrimental effects across the board. And that's a hard argument to fight, especially in the land of fruits and nuts. So,
well, all of these issues that you've heard about this morning, certainly one of the things that we do as a national organization, we do have a national PAC fund, and it is very important. Brent, if you will, put up the PowerPoint, and Michael Esposito, go over some of the important issues of PAC funds.
Sure. Good morning. I serve as an advisory role to a number of PACs and a number of super PACs. And as you can see, the title of this is The Importance of PAC Funds to Organizations. And the slides have been prepared because the Federal Election Commission that oversees and regulates PACs and campaign financing is pretty strict in terms of what I can and can't say. So, PACs go all the way back to 1944. And if you can see, that's a picture of Franklin D. Roosevelt, not of Sante. So they go back to 1944.
I was born in 47.
When unions got together and they tried to help Franklin D. Roosevelt be reelected. In 1947, Taft-Hartley Act banned organizations from contributing to campaigns, so PACs were formed for those to get together to bundle money together for campaigns. In '71, Congress passed the Federal Election Campaign Act, or FECA, and amendments in 1974 defined how a PAC could operate and also established the Federal Election Commission, the FEC, to enforce campaign finance laws. A PAC is a political action committee. There's two types of PACs. There's federal PACs and state PACs, both of which have different contribution laws. The definition is right there. Political action committees are special organizations. It reads on and on. Basically, the definition is you get contributions from individuals, you bundle them together, and you make a contribution to a campaign or a candidate. An organization becomes a political action committee or a PAC when their contributions or their expenditures exceed $1,000. Types of federal PACs. A connected PAC, that's what the NIADA PAC is. There's more than 4,600 connected PACs. A non-connected PAC lobbies or advocates on a single issue, sometimes set up by members of Congress. A leadership PAC is member to member, so a member of Congress can set up a PAC to support other members, obviously, in that member's own party. And then a super PAC, which a number of you have probably heard in the news recently. The super PAC has unlimited amounts of contributions from individuals and from corporations. Corporations is key. In a regular federal PAC, a corporation cannot contribute. It has to all come from individuals. In a super PAC, it can come from corporations. Super PACs are huge. The key to a super PAC is that you can't contribute directly to a member or a candidate. You have to do media buys, grassroots campaigns. You cannot tie it directly to the member. So again, the NIADA PAC is a connected PAC. The FEC rules for contributions and how a PAC can spend its money. An individual is limited to contributing $5,000 per year to a federal PAC. Like I said, corporations and unions may not contribute to the federal PAC. The PAC can spend its money on a candidate $5,000 per each election, and that includes a primary and a general election. The PAC can spend $15,000 of its money into a political party, or can contribute $5,000 to another PAC per year. The bottom point is very important: no cash. I've seen it many times. Those of you looking to put cash in a plastic bag or a paper bag and bring it in, no cash. Some examples currently of some PACs that are out there. 2010, these are numbers from 2010 election, a connected PAC, which again is the NIADA PAC. National Association of Realtors has a PAC of $3.8 million. Honeywell, 3.65. National Beer Wholesalers Association, 3.3 million. So large PACs. Not as large as a super PAC. Super PAC, American Crossroads, is $26 million. That's a Republican super PAC. America's Family First Action Fund, $7 million. That's a Democrat super PAC. And Club for Growth, $5.5 million. That's an economic growth super PAC. And then Leadership, which is, again, member to member. You have Eric Cantor's membership leadership PAC. He has $1.7 million. The Freedom Project Boehner, $1.3 million. Here's some numbers for you. So how is a PAC important to NIADA? The average price of winning an election in 2008 in the Senate was $2.4 million, and in the House was $710,000. I can tell you the members of Congress know, you can ask them any time of the day, how much money they have in their coffer in an election. Every dollar is important to a member of Congress, especially these days in a downturn economy. Every dollar is important to a member of Congress. In an election cycle broken down by industry, in the automotive industry, in 2010, $4.8 million PAC money was spent. You can see the breakdown, Democrats versus Republican. 2012, so far, $2.6 million has been spent. You can do the math. It looks like more is going to be spent in 2012 than in 2010. So what does it do? How does it help a PAC in D.C.? It helps to gain access to certain members of Congress, key members of Congress, helps to lobby a certain position, helps to advocate for a specific piece of legislation, helps to build relationships, increases visibility, and ensures re-election of those who are helpful to the association and the industry. Our role in the PAC would be to help to advise when the best time is to make contributions, target the key member of Congress, make sure that the right message is communicated when the contribution is made. So that's the slideshow. That's what I have now. If I can close with a couple of key points. The members each have a war chest. They know, like I said, to the dollar that they have in there right now. If a member of Congress doesn't get elected or retires, that war chest goes with them. So that's a reason why it's very, very important to them. And you know, we all know that this isn't the easiest subject to speak about. Sometimes it's a turn-off to people. But there are some old-school members who very much rely on doing business this way. A few clients that we've had have been blindsided by a piece of legislation, a bad piece of legislation that was all of a sudden introduced with no warning, only to have a call from that member of Congress's chief of staff or otherwise hinting that a certain amount of money would make that go away. So that's how business is run. You know, an analogy I use all the time, and it'll go over well in this room, is that, you know, you think of a car, an automobile. I mean, you have the gasoline makes the car go. What you have up here and with you all is the gasoline that makes everything happen in D.C. Well, the oil is the finance side of this. Without the oil, it's kind of difficult to make the car go, even though you have the gasoline. So it's very important to organizations. It's why a lot of organizations spend a lot of money in PACs, and it does help to get the job done. Mike?
Very good. Any questions out there for our panelists? Yep. Got a microphone back there? All the way down front here. I'll get to you. They're back there with the microphone. Go ahead.
Okay.
Got one here? In the back, yeah.
Okay. Hello. My name is Alan Lynch. I'm the Executive Director of the Independent Auto Dealers Association in Minnesota and North Dakota. I would like to say thank you to the Board of Directors of NIADA for helping fight this thing in California. I'm not from California, obviously, but for a state to fight something this big all alone is really difficult and almost impossible. And my appreciation goes out to the board of NIADA to do this thing for California, because that's exactly what it does. It just keeps rolling downhill. Minnesota would be the next one. We always follow whatever California does, smart or stupid, either way. It's kind of automatic. So I really appreciate it. So if we can get it killed out there or altered out there enough to make it livable, that'll help me a great deal. And I think we owe the National Board a big hand for fighting this thing. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you, Al. Don, I've got a question right down front here. Right here.
Well, when I heard Mr. Esposito talk about the partisanship, and then I had this super question, and then I think young Esposito answered it when I saw the PAC money. But I guess my question is, what's driving all the partisanship? Historically, why is it now? And what's next session going to be like? What's the future? What do you think?
Well, I think what's driving it is just the philosophical differences which have become so dramatic now. I mean, there's extreme polarization in Congress in terms of philosophy of government. I mean, you know, I was up there in '94 when the Republicans took the House for the first time since 1958. But the folks who took the House knew that to get along, you had to, to get things done, you had to get along. I mean, in my experience in the legislative process is, you know, the essence of the legislative process is the art of compromise. You don't have to compromise on principles, but you have to compromise on the specifics, and you keep hoping that you're moving your principles forward. These people, there's like, it's a non-starter. I mean, they don't talk to one another. They're philosophically, you know, they're over here. Look at, as a result of the last congressional election, what's left of the Democrats in the House are liberals. I mean, because they're in safe districts, right? So they get reelected. They're in liberal districts. So you have that liberal element in the House of Representatives. You know what happened with the Tea Party on the Republican side, so that's the problem you have. There's only two things that's going to change the situation. I can't imagine it getting any worse, but I see only two things changing, and that's what happens in November. And I think that all depends on what life looks like 2 weeks before the election. That's been my experience. And if the election were held 2 weeks from now, I would say, as far as Congress is concerned, the Dems would probably hold the Senate. There might be some marginal changes in the House, but I think, you know, the control will still be the same. So we'll see what happens in November. And the other thing, I think, is the mindset. Regardless of who's in Congress, if it gets to the point where the American electorate won't tolerate the policies that Congress is espousing, then that'll force changes. And I saw that happen in '94. Contract for America came in there, and everybody was gung-ho on cutting back the federal government, doing this, this, and that. I'm not saying that's bad, or I'm not, you know, I'm not attacking that. And deficit spending is a big issue. But my experience coming off of '94 is after a period of time, you can take the American electorate can tolerate this, you know, cutting spending and the deficit being a priority. What becomes important over a period of time is, how do I afford to put my kids through college? How do I take care of, you know, how do I pay for groceries? And what does the country look like in terms of the environment and the infrastructure? That hasn't happened yet. So we'll have to see. It's going to be the elections and/or the mindset. And there was an article, I wish I'd kept it, I just deleted it, that came out yesterday from a very well-respected publication that looks at Capitol Hill, where they predict that the situation is going to be worse next Congress. They predict there will be 155 new members who will have served less than 4 years. 4 years. You look at the results from 2010, you look at the 30-some-odd members who are quitting this time around, can't take it anymore. Olympia Snowe, senator from Maine, moderate, well-respected senator. She's gone. Lugar loses, right? I mean, he's always been considered a moderate member. Now your definition of conservative in Congress has changed significantly. Members who you thought were conservative in Congress now are moderates, because the conservatives are way over there and the liberals are way over there. So, you know.
Yeah, when you have a Congress who can work together, then you can go after policy initiatives and things that are good for you. When you have a Congress that's very partisan, you have to protect the interests. We go around and we say that no legislation is a lot better than bad legislation. Yeah. So we prevent any adverse things from happening legislative-wise for the association.
When I worked on the Hill, I was chief counsel of the Transportation Committee. We had jurisdiction over all infrastructure in the United States. We never saw infrastructure as a partisan issue, so we worked closely, both sides. And we went to the floor and we went lockstep. We had 75 members on the committee, which was a very significant voting bloc. But when we went to that floor, Democrats and Republicans, we were all on board with that legislation. That doesn't happen now. That's just one example of a committee. My older daughter is the staff director of the Rail Subcommittee. She doesn't have a clue as to what the Republican members are thinking about in the area of rail transportation. She's not involved in anything that goes on in the process. She walks into a conference now on the highway bill where part of the discussion has to do with rail issues, and the House Republicans put an offer on the table to the Senate. She's never seen the offer. She wasn't involved in that process. That's not good, right? I mean, that's not the way it should be. I mean, all this talk about, you know, working together, that's all crap. They don't work together. The White House doesn't work with Congress. Congress doesn't work with the White House. There's no internal workings. It's a very, very bad, frustrating situation. We have to adapt to it in what we do, and we do that. But, you know, the reality is what it is.
And to add to that, too, you asked why the bipartisanship, it's power. And if you just take a look at Nancy Pelosi, when she said, well, we'll read the bill when it comes to the desk regarding the health care bill, but a lot of it is about power. In California, Democrats and Republicans were seatmates. Then in the speakership fight, they divided them up. They used to go out together at night. They used to drink together. In fact, Pete Wilson said that's what they ought to start doing is drinking together. Yeah. And then we'd have some camaraderie. But it really is. They've divided themselves.
Right. The highway bill, which is in conference, the Republicans don't want the highway bill, which would provide jobs, enacted into law before the election, because they don't want the president to claim victory for a jobs bill. That's not the way it should be.
Building relationships. They're not interested in relationships.
They're not interested in relationships. They're not interested in compromise. They're not interested in communication. And, you know, the process has changed. The institution has changed.
And right now, everyone is paranoid going into elections, so no one's going to put their name down in a vote where it can be used as ammunition in November.
Yeah.
Folks, I'm going to have to cut it off because lunch is coming up here in a few minutes. Got to go all the way around down the hallway to get there. But I can see that there's a lot of questions out there. Certainly, any of us walking around here this week, if you do have questions or whatever, just ask. We'll be glad to answer your questions. And certainly, anytime you have questions or issues you'd like to bring to our attention, just call the NIADA office.
Hey, Mike. One thing real quick, and I know we're up against a hard stop here, but I appreciate Al's comments about what's happening in California. I just wanted to give everybody one thing that they can do. Everybody sitting in this meeting today can help move the initiative in California forward in opposition to these three bills by going to protectfreedomtodrive.com. It's the website that we've set up to voice our opposition as an industry against these three bills. Sign up, just go to whether you're on your cell phone or your iPad or your computer, just go to protectfreedomtodrive.com, put your name in, put your email, put the name of your company, and you'd be surprised how effective that can be the more voices we add to our initiative there in opposition to these three bills. So sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure everybody...
No problem. Very good. Michael?
How about a hand for our distinguished panel today?